No, man, you're perfectly fine. How you doing? You doing okay today?
Good, good. I'm in Baghdad, in Iraq, not in Beirut today, and I'm heading to Iran with FPTV team, Free Palestine TV,
Uh-huh.
so we can report on the truth of what has happened on the ground, so people can see really the results of this war.
I am so glad you're doing that. I'm so glad you're doing that. Um, Give me your take on this. From my point of view, here Free Palestine TV, from my point of view, Israel and the U.S. was surprised. They thought that the Iranian government was weaker, where they could overthrow the government in a short, blunt attack using Mossad, CIA, whack jobs internally to the country itself, fifth column, and external attacks and decapitation strikes. That didn't happen. And they found themselves in a war of attrition with a country that was 3 times the size of Iraq. I mean, you're talking about a country of 90 million people versus a country of 8. And they were incapable of dealing the damage necessary in order to stop it. So financially, economically, militarily, they were defeated. They had to stop. And the US's entry into the war was that threat of, I'm saving my client because my client can't keep going. Israel had been putting out ceasefire offers. Give me your take on that. Do you see it that way? How do you view it?
Well, rationally, the United States and the Zionist colony used all the weapons they have below the nuclear threshold, all the tricks that they've used before on Iran. And the result was that Iran fought back. And, we can take the attacks by Trump as an indicator of really what happened. So let's look at this way. The Zionists attacked Iran. Iran bombed back the colony. They cried. The emperor had to come to save them, but he couldn't use any of his assets on the ground in the region in fear of mass casualties in American soldiers and or the destruction of the oil fields and gas fields that the United States has been looting for the last 80 years, and the collapse of those vassal regimes in the Arabian Peninsula. So what did Trump do? He flew B-2 bombers, not from Diego Garcia, because he was scared even Diego Garcia can be reached, the island chain across from India, can be reached by Iran's missiles and can be destroyed. So he flew B-2 bombers with the largest bombs in the cache of weapons that the United States has below the nuclear threshold. He threw 16 out of the 20 that are available to the US, those mock bombs. They only have 20 of them in the whole military of the United States. He used 16 of them to attack the nuclear sites of Iran and failed to achieve his objectives. Therefore, he retreated, and Iran had 2 choices in front of it: to whip the behind of the United States and the Zionist colony in front of the whole world and humiliate them further, edging them closer to the use of a nuclear weapon, okay, and or take the win and do a symbolic attack on a base, the largest air base that the United States has outside its territory, in the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, giving everybody a heads up that is coming, where the United States withdrew all its soldiers and set up all the air defenses that it can, and then sending 16 missiles, only one of them being a hypersonic strategic missile, and it managed to hit the storage units of the weapons that the US had to leave behind it. It couldn't take all its weapons. It had to only run away with the soldiers, and the jet fuel, storage areas, clearly showing that Iran can destroy all the American bases if it wants to in the region.
Right.
So now that we can understand this, we can analyze that Iran has already defeated the Zionist colony, already defeated the United States, and what the strategy of the axis of resistance over the last 22 months has been was always limited with this idea that the Zionist colony or the United States and the whole empire behind it, Western states, would use a nuclear weapon in the case of a mass death situation of the colonists. So the axis of resistance has patiently dragged this war so long, and is willing to drag it even further, and to give huge sacrifices in numbers of Palestinians, Lebanese, Yemenis, Iraqis, Iranians that are being massacred, looking to the final goal of the internal collapse of the Zionist colony by itself. We're already close to that point, where the European imperialist powers governed from DC will eventually grab all their garbage that they dropped in Palestine and withdraw them along with their nuclear weapons, as they did in South Africa. So I know we're all very saddened about the genocide that is unfolding in Palestine, in Gaza. But believe me when I tell you that the leadership of the Palestinian resistance, Sinwar and others, when they designed October 7th and when they launched October 7th, they all knew that they will be martyrs, that they will not live to see the day of the liberation of Palestine, but that the liberation of Palestine would be the assured result of October 7th. And as we're seeing, this is what's happening.
Let's step into Iran. I agree with everything you just said, by the way. I agree with it entirely. Regardless of what is coming out of Israel in regards to the things that they're saying, I think the fact that the U.S. had to save them was not part of the plan. Like they thought, and the U.S. probably even thought, that Israel could overthrow the government. I mean, if you notice, the nuclear stuff only mattered for a day. And then it became, we need to kill Ayatollah. We need to, put in this government. Seymour Hersh, when he wrote his article, was very clear what their intentions were. It was to create a failed state. And the Iranian state wasn't as weak as they thought it was. It might have been a bit porous in regards to the Mossad agents, but it was not weak. I guess the question becomes, now what? It's not like the empire is going to stop. The surprise is over, meaning they're no longer surprised about Iran's military sophistication. So anything that happens now, they're going into it with a clear point of view of that state is much stronger than we thought that state was. Is that a risk in this way for Iran? Meaning, you're right. I don't think, two things. One, I don't know if they use the bunker busters. Trump lies as easily as he breathes. He could just be lying. Two, now what? So there's a standoff. The U.S., Iran was able to create a certain amount of deterrence with the United States because the U.S. doesn't want 50,000 soldiers dying, going back in body bags. They don't want those quizzling, weak governments collapsing. And Iran, I would imagine, doesn't want a larger war with the U.S. So there's a standoff in this case. But obviously, Israel is not going to stop. And they've already said we want a Lebanon model for Iran, as if they somehow created some kind of dominance in a war that they lost. What happens now going forward?
Look, Iran with its conventional weapons, its missile systems that it built, is able to destroy the American presence in the region and the Zionist colony in a minute if they want to. But that's not going to, this is not going to lead to an end to this war. In fact, it's just going to bring out the ultra-fascists in all of Europe and the United States, and they'll be out for a nuclear holocaust. So this is very important. The other thing that we need to know is that there is no country in this world that is safe from these terrorist intelligence attacks in this age of AI and micro drones and micro weapons that could be smuggled anywhere. And we saw what happened to Russia with those drone attacks. And the United States could easily be a target to similar tactics. But I think, again, the axis of resistance doesn't want to do that. They could smuggle a few drones into England or France or Germany, and we could see the president or prime ministers of those countries taken out in a blink of an eye also. This is the reality of the world we live in. There's nothing really that Israel or the United States can do that any of their opponents can't. Okay? Now, what does Israel want to do? They're talking about following the Lebanese model in Iran. They can't. And this is why today there was a huge number of air raids and bombardments in South Lebanon, because they're taking out their frustration on Lebanon. They're bombarding around Nabatea city, and it's the largest city in the south of Lebanon. And but they're also bombarding just open areas. There's nothing left that they can do really in Lebanon to harm Hezbollah. As we're talking, the final countdown has started for the existence of the Zionist colony. Anyone that didn't recognize that countdown beginning on October 7th now is seeing it clearly. No matter what the US and the West does, this is going to be an eventuality. How much death will occur from now till then, that's something that only God knows. I hope, you look at what's happening inside the United States, inside Europe, in terms of the beginnings of, revolt almost, right? The levels of discontent within the populations in the West is unprecedented. It's not even, you can't even compare it to the Vietnam War era in terms of how much people are angry at how their governments are dealing with the situation. And there's zero trust between the populations in the West and their governments. There's zero trust between the populations and their mass media. So it's only a matter of time before we see radical action happening in the streets of the West. And Iran and the axis of resistance don't even have to instigate it, don't have to direct it, don't have to fund it. You know how they're attacking Palestine Action in the UK, claiming that Iran is funding it? Iran doesn't have to do anything. People are so angry and so frustrated that they cannot express their opinion in any peaceful way, that it's driving itself by itself. People are throwing money at donations at Palestine Action, or even Free Palestine TV. All our funders are donors, little donors from the West. It's regular citizens that are just frustrated with the mass media. So these are all the things that are going to happen in the next year, and I wish safety for everybody on this planet. Let's see. Hopefully, the elite in the West will give up before things are too wild. Your mic.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can be pretty anesthetized in the West. I agree with you about the level of discontent. That is, oh man, that is so true. This distrust of political figures and media, completely true. Absolutely true. Will they get out on the streets is a whole different matter. I mean, I guess from my point of view, we watch genocide take place. You said that most of your funders are coming from the West. I can see it, right? I mean, you look at what your government is doing and you think to yourself, this is outrageous. And you want to do something. And so you try to support things that are helping the things that's against what your government is doing. So I can totally see that part. I don't know about people going in the streets though, but I agree with you about the level of discontent. Maybe in Europe, they seem to be more inclined to do it. In America, yeah, Xbox, TV, like there's so much stuff to kind of put these people to sleep. Iran, I have to be honest though, I am concerned about Iran. So when I see Ayatollah come out and make a very strong statement, and basically, but he's been strong all the way through, saying we shouldn't be trusting the states, we shouldn't be trusting America. And then you get the Pezeshkian government, and tell me if you disagree with me on this. And please do, because your understanding of it is going to be better than mine. It seems that policy that is coming out of the Iranian government has a heavy amount of Pezeshkian's government involved in it. Whereas an appeasement strategy seemed to be the strategy that they went with. And, even now, Pezeshkian puts out a comment saying, we're willing to work with Americans to deal with our disagreements. It's like, dude, they just killed 1,000 of your people. What are you talking about? Like, is that coming out of government? Like, what's going on? How, why? Look, I live here. Our point of view is the fact that Iran exists is the problem. Does Iran get that? That our issue is that you exist, that, we don't want the government to be there. That is our issue. That there is no negotiating with us in these terms. Give me your take on that. Do they get that? Is that a government issue? Is there something else going on in Iran that seems to be dividing point of view?
Okay. So I'm sure, Jamal, that you are, politically mature enough to know that there's no difference between the Democrats and the Republicans,
Yes.
right? That is all theater. I think, the whole world right now gave up on this supposed differentiation between Democrats and Republicans. But Iran has been smart enough to actually make the whole world and their own population believe that there's a difference between the conservatives and their progressives in politics in Iran. They have actually achieved what no other enemy of the United States has been able to achieve, to create this illusion of democracy. And that even the enemies of Iran believe that there is democracy in it. You see, I don't think there's any democracy.
But you got to explain that one to me. Break that down to me.
Yes.
You got to explain that.
Bring it back to you. Okay, explain it back, one step at a time.
Okay.
So Iran, the reason that it's been able to actually resist so well is because it created a fake political, system of challenges and controlled opposition and so forth that the United States has managed for a couple of hundred years and now has abandoned. You see? So the assassination of President Raisi came from Azerbaijan. The operation to take down the helicopter that was carrying Raisi was coordinated and acted on from Azerbaijan, the neighbor of Iran. Iran's largest, cultural minority is Azerbaijanis. They're around 20%. And when it was clear to those who run Iran that the biggest danger in a situation of internal upheaval that the West wants to instigate is not going to come from the Kurds or the Baluchis or the Luris, is going to come from the Azerbaijanis, okay? That have an actual state on the other side of the border that is armed by the Israelis and is sending oil to Israel. So what did Iran do? They elected an Azerbaijani as the president, Pezeshkian, a doctor. It's like the United States electing a black Obama as the president. You see? And here is Pezeshkian playing the soft liberal face. Okay? That is a huge, huge achievement. Okay? And the attacks that were coming at Iran, the largest parts of the concentration of attacks of the Zionist F-16s and F-35s was on the Azerbaijani parts of Iran.
Right.
And Iran could have attacked Azerbaijan to stop these incursions, but didn't during the war because It wanted to show its own Azerbaijani populations that it cares about the people of Azerbaijan, that it's not going to go to war with Azerbaijan, although it's backstabbing Iran, and so that played out really well. The internal cohesion inside Iran, and specifically in the north, west Azerbaijani areas, they had the biggest solidarity with their own president, who is of their background. And today we woke up, of course, to huge explosions in the military factories of Azerbaijan today. So Iran just had to stay a little bit, sit back a little bit, and then start the explosions after the war ends. I know a lot of people were angry at this reformist and whatever in Iran, but it's a game, and they are playing it better than America could ever do.
Okay, just so I will frame it and correct me, tell me when I'm getting it wrong. So your take is that for all intents and purposes that Pezeshkian is effectively opposition, controlled opposition.
Exactly.
And that he's there specifically to maintain political cohesion within the context of the country, because one of the things that they wanted to do. And by the way, you're right about that. I mean, there was a map that was circulating of this plan to break up Iran into multiple pieces based upon the regions of the various different ethnic groups that are in the country. Same thing with Russia, where they wanted to break up Russia along certain ethnic lines. So yes, agreed. But your point is, part of the reason that Pezeshkian got in is because the Azerbaijanis were going to be the biggest problem in Iran, and they needed to maintain political cohesion. And by putting, let's say, controlled opposition reformists into power, they were able to effectively do that. So Azerbaijan stays on board because their president is of their ethnic background.
Yes, you're 100% great in your summary there.
But he went with an appeasement strategy. Would you agree with me on that? That he actually did want to make agreements and deals with the West, even against making deals with, let's say, the Russians or the Chinese?
Well, I mean, the US and the Zionists claim that they're doing a peace process with the Palestinians and for decades. And we know they weren't. Yes. So why can't the Iranian elite also do the same? Confuse your enemy, keep your enemy busy. Half of the elite of the US trying to make a deal with Iran that it's not going to happen. Iran knows it's not going to happen. Let it drag on. Why not? Let the world see that Iran is trying, but the US keeps on killing their negotiators. It's all acceptable losses. These are all, acceptable losses to Iran in terms of the death of their generals or their negotiators. This is irrelevant in a state of 90 million people that has institutions, that has changes of guard, or that is now trying to bring in a new generation in. And now this new generation that was the West wanted to instigate into revolting against the state.
That's over.
It's over.
That's over. Yeah.
It's over. They've lived now what the first generation of the Iranian revolutionaries in 1979 have lived. So Iran, that was worried about the third generation that is growing up and its connectivity to the history of Iran, and it's the influence that there is on it by TikTok and all of that. Now Iran can sit back. Of course, they shouldn't sit back completely, but they can be sure that the vast majority of the new generation have inherited the resolve against imperialism and Zionism, and have a healthy dose of hate to America and the Zionists.
Laith, as an American, I don't think that way. It's hard for me to I understand your point, and it did work out that way either way. That for all intents and purposes, you have one group committing a genocide, and you have people in Iran seeing it, and the same group that committed the genocide just killed 1,000 people in an unprovoked attack during "quote unquote" negotiations. I even agree with you that the rest of the world looks at it and says, "Okay, Iran is a rational actor. Israel and the U.S. are out of control, and these maniacs have nukes to make it even worse." Where does Iran go with this? I'm curious. I mean, like you said, they can sit back a bit, but for all intents and purposes, they know that Israel is not giving up. They know that maybe Trump doesn't want a larger war, but he's weak. And because he's weak, he can get pulled into a war if necessary. And Iran knows that Israel and the US has nukes. So, as you point out, a mass casualty event may trigger that nuclear threshold. So Iran was always limited in what they could do. Meaning, yeah, you can kill and you can destroy military targets, but you have to always do it below a threshold that would rationalize or justify. And I know that's subjective, but that would justify implementing nuclear weapons that the West would okay. Like, I don't think Europe will complain. I don't think the US will bitch about it. The rest of the world will be horrified. Give me your take on that. How do you manage a nuclear power in this way with a conventional military?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Iranians just already withdrew from the non-proliferation treaty, and they barred the International Atomic Energy Agency from entering the country. And they probably will be rushing to either build their own nukes or have North Korea deliver some of their nukes to them. I also expect Iran to announce in the next few months that they have ballistic missiles that could reach the United States. Okay, so and nobody will be objecting in the rest of the world to these things.
No,
okay?
they will not.
And they can't do anything about it. And I think, you look at China and Russia, they also, their interest doesn't, want their own interest, make it that it's, they don't want a mass destruction of the Arabian Peninsula or the oil and gas in the region, or disruptions of international trade. Right. So we will see an increase of specifically Chinese, Pakistani, and North Korean cooperation with Iran. And for those that don't know, the Iranian, Pakistani, Syrian, and North Korean ballistic missile and nuclear weapons program were all merged together at the beginning. This is, especially, and Iran actually entered that alliance after the revolution. In the beginning, it was Syria and Syrian engineers that were helping North Korea and Pakistan build their ballistic missiles, and North Korea was going to build those nuclear reactors for Syria that were attacked by the Zionists in the early 2000s. So now we will see a much more open cooperation on that level. And we may see, and as we're already seeing, Yemen take a much more front seat in the attacks on the Zionist colony. Yesterday, they fired, I think, 2 or 3 hypersonic missiles simultaneously. And Iran has to just deliver more of those and or help the Yemenis build more of them by delivering more of the components. And, Israel cannot fight this war with Yemen, right? And the United States withdrew from that war and surrendered to the Yemenis already. So, Iran doesn't have to go into war again with the Zionists. It can just allow Yemen to do so. We will be seeing probably changes also in the situation in Lebanon. Up until now, we haven't seen a return to Hezbollah's military attacks. I told you today they were, attacking Lebanon, the Zionists. Pretty soon, I think Hezbollah will be ready to go back to this war. And the situation in Syria is not going to be allowed to continue the way it is. We will see something there happening. All of those are indicators of the retreat. The Zionists have reached the apex of their power with the fall of Damascus. Everything from that point on now indicates a beginnings of retreat. And that was because they chewed more than they can. And they started, believing in every piece of propaganda that they put out as Zionists. They truly believe that God is behind them, to the point that they're blinded to the strategic and tactical realities on the ground.
So just to be clear, you don't think Iran is going to go back into negotiations with the United States?
No. And if they do, it's just going to be part of this tactic of wasting time with the Americans.
And you're not concerned that Israel would drag, and I'm saying quote unquote drag, because it's U.S. policy to get involved in some kind of large war with Iran, but I don't necessarily think Trump wants to. So I'm using the term drag. But you're not concerned that Israel knows what you're saying, that because of what is just taking place, where they've been militarily defeated, that Iran is not just going to sit still, that they realize Israel having a nuke is a problem, and we need to mitigate that issue. And the U.S. having this, Bigfoot is a problem, and we need to mitigate that issue. Meaning, Iran has a rational interest in mitigating those weaknesses, with Israel having nukes and the U.S. being able to get always involved, and that they're going to go balls out to try to mitigate those as a rational actor, meaning it is a rational act to say, that guy has a gun, I need to get a gun, or I need to get something that I can use to mitigate the fact that the guy has a gun. Meaning, Israel, for example, right now, the reporting has come out that Israel has been getting shipments from the United States hand over fist, effectively reloading their weapons capacity. I would imagine offensive and defensive weapons to the degree that the U.S. has them at their disposal. And you also get Israel effectively saying this quote unquote Lebanese model. You don't think that they're going to try to precipitate an attack that will draw the U.S. further into it, knowing that their first attempt failed?
They are crazy. So we can't really calculate everything. Okay. But we already have 22 months of this war that we can fall back to analyze. So the Zionists couldn't defeat Hamas, so they ran forward and attacked Hezbollah.
Right.
They couldn't defeat Hezbollah, so they ran forward and attacked Ansarullah in Yemen. And they couldn't defeat Ansarullah, so they dragged the United States, ran forward, and dragged the United States to attack Ansarullah. The United States and the whole Western coalition was defeated by Yemen. So they ran forward and they attacked Iran. And they got defeated by Iran, so they dragged the United States into it, and the United States got defeated by Iran. So what else can they do? Can they do a repeat of the same thing? Is it going to change anything, the repeat of the same thing? It's not. So I predict, as we are seeing, is that they're going back to step one. They are going on a rampage of mass genocide in Gaza, in hopes that after all this 22 months of escalating, and getting defeated every time they escalate, to run back to step one and try to finish that job, which they are not actually achieving. We saw over the last 24 hours, at least 20 Israeli soldiers killed by Hamas. And as we see, they're going back to bombarding Lebanon and hoping that they can get a win there. So repeating the same action is not going to bring you different results. And I think the success of Iran is going to only embolden the other parts of the axis of resistance And it's already, the success of Iran has rejuvenated all of humanity that were feeling like,
Dejected.
helpless,
Yes.
okay, for watching a genocide. Now you saw people getting excited. They're like, yeah, beat them, okay? And people feel that there is a hope now that we can beat the Zionists. And it's everybody, everywhere, on every street in the world is smelling blood, is smelling Zionist blood. And pretty soon we're all going to drink it.